What if I told you that a bunch of health-conscious joggers in the 1980s accidentally tricked the entire global scientific community into believing a massive nutritional myth?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd, but it's actually true.
Right. So I want you to picture something. You are 7 years old. You're sitting at the kitchen table staring down at this, like, soggy bowl of cereal.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah. And you are running 10 minutes late for school. You try to push the bowl away, but you hear that universal age-old parental warning.
Eat your breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day.
Exactly. You can't skip it or you'll ruin your health. It is practically drilled into our DNA at this point. The idea that stepping out the door without eating something first is a literal biological crime.
It really is. It's arguably the most deeply entrenched piece of nutritional dogma in the modern world. We're raised from infancy to believe that breakfast is this non-negotiable biological mandate.
Right.
But, that assumption is finally starting to crumble under the weight of modern data.
Which is exactly why today we are taking a deep dive into a massive stack of global medical and nutritional research. We're going to figure out if that golden rule is actually true.
Yeah, let's get into it.
I mean, are you doing irreparable damage to your metabolism by just grabbing a black coffee and running out the door?
Yeah.
Or is the necessity of breakfast entirely dependent on your individual biology, your lifestyle, and your genetics? We are officially putting the most important meal of the day on trial.
And just to set the stage for this trial, you should know that the medical and scientific communities have been battling over this for a really long time.
Oh, for sure.
So let's establish the core thesis right out of the gate. Breakfast is absolutely not mandatory for everyone. It is not a universal law of human biology.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, instead it's a highly personal choice dictated by a few very specific, really fascinating biological factors.
I love diving into topics like this because it forces us to ask, like, how do we all get so universally brainwashed?
Yeah.
If the actual science says otherwise, who sold us this idea that a bowl of oats at 7 a.m. is the absolute key to longevity?
To understand that, you really have to look at how nutritional science used to be conducted.
Oh.
For decades, public health recommendations were built almost entirely on what we call observational studies.
Right, where they just watch people.
Exactly. Researchers would look at a massive group of, say, 50,000 people over 10 years. They simply observed them. And the data seemed really clear. The people who consistently ate breakfast generally had much better health outcomes.
So they lived longer, got sick less.
Yeah, they were at a lower risk for chronic diseases, their body weight was more stable, their blood pressure was better. So the conclusion drawn by the scientific community seemed totally logical at the time. They thought eating breakfast causes good health.
But that is a classic case of confusing correlation with causation. I mean, that's like going to a marathon, looking at the runners, and assuming someone is in peak cardiovascular shape simply because they bought a pair of $200 running shoes.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, actually.
Right. You're totally ignoring the fact that they actually run 5 miles every single morning. You're just looking at the shoes and saying, wow, the foam in those soles makes your heart incredibly strong.
Exactly. And in the scientific community, that phenomenon is known as healthy user bias.
Healthy user bias, got it.
Yeah, so when modern researchers finally went back and dug deeper into the daily lives of those breakfast eaters from the old observational studies, they uncovered this massive confounding pattern.
Let me guess. They were just healthier in general.
Exactly. The individuals who had the time and discipline to sit down and eat a balanced, nutritious breakfast every morning also tended to be the exact same people who exercised regularly.
Right.
They were far less likely to smoke. They slept 8 hours a night. They drank more water.
So it wasn't the magical properties of the oatmeal keeping them out of the hospital. It was the fact that their entire lives were structured around healthy habits.
Precisely. To find out if breakfast itself was the actual magic bullet, science had to evolve. Researchers stopped us watching people and started designing randomized controlled trials, or RCTs.
And those are, like, the gold standard, right?
The absolute gold standard of science. Instead of observing wild behavior, researchers took hundreds of participants and strictly forced them into 2 groups.
No.
One group was mandated to eat breakfast every single day. The other group was entirely forbidden from eating until noon. Every other variable in their lives was totally controlled.
The ultimate stress test. What happens to the human body when you force the issue in a highly controlled environment?
The results actually sent shockwaves through the diet industry.
Really? What happened?
Multiple high-quality RCTs proved that there is virtually zero significant difference in weight loss or daily calorie expenditure between the group forced to eat and the group forced to skip.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if guaranteed weight loss isn't on the table for breakfast eaters, what about all those terrifying rumors about skipping it?
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, the biggest fear I hear, and I hear this, like, all the time, is starvation mode. The idea is that if you don't eat within an hour of waking up, your body panics, assumes a famine has struck, and instantly starts hoarding every single ounce of fat it can find, totally tanking your metabolism.
Yeah, it is an incredibly persistent myth, and we really need to firmly dismantle it today.
So it's completely fake.
Skipping breakfast does not trigger starvation mode. I mean, think about this from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay.
If our hunter-gatherer ancestors woke up, couldn't find a berry bush immediately, and their bodies instantly went into a lethargic, fat-hoarding metabolic coma.
We would have died out.
Exactly. The human race would have gone extinct a million years ago. True starvation mode, where your basal metabolic rate drops to preserve life, takes days of severe calorie restriction to kick in.
Not just sleeping in and skipping toes.
Right, not a 16-hour overnight fast.
Right.
Long-term weight management is fundamentally governed by the total amount of energy you consume versus the total amount of energy you expend over weeks and months.
I hear you on the long-term energy balance, but I'm going to push back a little here.
Sure.
What about the immediate metabolic boost?
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading in a dozen different fitness magazines that eating breakfast kicks your metabolism into high gear.
Ah, yes.
The analogy they always used was putting logs on a fire.
Mm.
You have to stoke the fire early so it burns hot all day.
Yeah, that fitness magazine trope is based on a real biological process called the thermic effect of food, but the fire analogy is deeply flawed. Let's just throw that one out.
Talk the fire out. Good.
Instead, think of your digestive system like a massive industrial factory.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
When you swallow food, you have to power up the factory. You need mechanical energy to churn the stomach, and you need chemical energy to synthesize digestive enzymes. It takes energy to extract energy,
Right.
and that process burns calories.
Got it. So the factory powering up gives you a metabolic bump.
It does. But the critical misunderstanding is about the clock on the factory wall.
Oh, fascinating.
The thermic effect of food happens whenever you ingest food. If you eat a 600-calorie meal at 8:00 a.m., the factory powers up and burns a certain number of calories to process it.
And if you skip?
If you skip breakfast and eat that exact same 600-calorie meal at 1:00 p.m., the factory powers up and burns the exact same number of calories.
So the timing doesn't matter.
Eating early doesn't mysteriously supercharge the factory. It just dictates the time of day the machinery turns on.
That makes so much sense when you break down the mechanics.
Yeah.
But if the thermic effect is identical regardless of the hour, what is actually happening in our bodies at dawn? There has to be a biological reason we evolved to feel different in the morning.
There is, and it revolves almost entirely around a hormone called insulin.
Ah, insulin.
Yeah. When you sleep, your body is fasting. By the time you wake up, your blood sugar is low, and your insulin sensitivity is at its absolute peak.
What does that mean in plain English?
Rather than the old cliche of insulin being a key, think of your muscle and fat cells as having loading docks.
Like the loading docks.
In the morning, after a long fast, those loading docks are wide open and highly efficient. When you eat breakfast, the body can rapidly clear glucose out of the bloodstream and pack it away into the cells for energy.
Which sounds incredibly beneficial. I mean, if your loading docks are open, you should use them.
Well, many medical professionals argue exactly that. In fact, there is observational data in our source stack suggesting that people who regularly skip breakfast might increase their risk of metabolic syndrome.
Like that again?
It's a dangerous cluster of conditions including high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and excess belly fat. Anyway, skipping might increase that risk by anywhere from 20 to 30%. They also see a spike in type 2 diabetes risk.
Wait, hold on. We literally just spent the first 10 minutes of this deep dive totally trashing observational studies because they are blinded by a healthy user bias.
I know.
Are we really going to turn around and trust an observational study that claims a massive 30% increase in diabetes risk? I mean, what do the gold standard RCTs say about insulin and weight management?
What's fascinating here is that you caught the exact contradiction that drove the scientific community crazy. To settle this tug of war, we have to look at a massive meta-analysis published in the British Medical Journal, the BMJ.
Okay, meta-analysis, that's the big one.
Exactly. A meta-analysis takes all the highest quality RCTs ever conducted and strips away the noise to find the absolute truth. And the RCTs totally validated your suspicion.
I knew it.
When it comes to long-term metabolic health and weight management, the timing of that first meal doesn't move the needle nearly as much as your overall daily diet. The BMJ analysis proved that, on average, breakfast eaters consume significantly more total calories over a 24-hour period than people who skip.
Well, sure, if you add a third meal to your day, you're taking in hundreds of extra calories.
Mm.
And let's be real, almost nobody mathematically reduces their lunch and dinner portions just because they had a bagel at 8 a.m.
Exactly. So let's compare the physiological state of the two groups. The breakfast eaters get a rapid influx of glucose. Their open-loading docs handle it well, their energy levels spike, and they feel great.
Why?
But the downside is they risk blowing past their daily caloric needs.
Right. And what happens under the hood of the skippers?
The skippers extend their overnight fast. Because no new glucose is entering the bloodstream, the liver eventually runs out of stored sugar.
And then what?
When that happens, the body has to switch fuel sources. It starts breaking down stored body fat into alternative energy molecules called ketones.
Oh, like the keto diet.
Exactly. This is a mild state of ketosis. It is essentially your body's clean-burning backup generator. This metabolic state makes it much easier to naturally reduce daily calorie intake without feeling ravenous.
Sounds like a win for skipping.
But wait, the severe risk for skippers is that they often miss out on crucial early-day nutrients. Breakfast foods are our primary delivery system for early calcium and soluble fiber.
Which brings up a massive caveat. So what does this all mean? Before anyone listening decides to throw their toaster out the window and live on black coffee, what does this mean for different demographics?
Right, context is everything.
Because casually slipping into ketosis to burn fat might be totally fine for a healthy 30-something office worker. But we aren't handing out a free pass to everyone, right?
We absolutely are not. The research is completely unambiguous here. There are specific populations for whom breakfast is biologically non-negotiable.
Let's unpack that. Who is on the must-eat list?
Children and teenagers are at the very top. Their bodies are actively building new tissue, but more importantly, their developing brains are ravenous.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, a human brain consumes about 20% of the body's entire glucose supply, and kids' bodies are not as efficient at synthesizing alternative fuels from fat yet.
Wow, 20%.
Studies consistently demonstrate that children who eat a nutrient-dense breakfast have vastly improved memory retention, sharper focus, and higher test scores. A child simply cannot concentrate on algebra when their brain is sending out biochemical distress signals for glucose.
I would imagine that exact same logic applies to expecting mothers.
It does. Pregnant and nursing women are essentially operating as a massive nutrient sink for a developing child.
Right, providing for two.
The caloric and mineral demands are immense. They require a steady, consistent intake of nutrition to prevent their own bodily reserves from being dangerously depleted.
Okay. So growing brains and expecting mothers. What about specific medical conditions?
Diabetics are a highly vulnerable group, specifically individuals managing their condition with injected insulin or certain oral medications that actively lower blood sugar.
Because if they take the meds but don't eat.
Exactly. If a diabetic takes their morning medication but skips breakfast, there is no incoming glucose to balance the drug. This leads to hypoglycemia, which is a severe crash in blood sugar.
That sounds dangerous.
Very. The brain is suddenly starved of energy, which can cause confusion, tremors, fainting, or worse. Anyone in this category should only alter their meal schedule with their endocrinologist's explicit approval.
Absolutely. And what about physical output? I'm thinking of athletes, construction workers, people doing heavy manual labor at dawn.
They definitely need to eat. When you wake up, the glycogen, which is the stored form of carbohydrate located inside your muscle tissue, is partially depleted from repairing your body overnight.
Okay.
If you attempt a brutal training session or heavy physical labor with low muscular reserves, your output will plummet and you will hit a wall of exhaustion incredibly fast.
So if you fall into one of those non-negotiable categories, what should you actually be eating? Because the science certainly isn't giving you a license to eat like a whole sleeve of chocolate donuts just because it's before 9:00 a.m.
Definitely not. Food quality dictates everything. The research fiercely warns against the standard modern breakfast highly processed cereals, pastries, and sweetened coffees.
Sugar bombs.
Exactly. Those foods cause a violent spike in blood sugar. The body panics, releases a flood of insulin to sweep all that sugar out of the blood as fast as possible, and that rapid sweep leaves you with a massive crash.
Ugh. The classic 11:00 a.m. slump.
You end up exhausted and starving 2 hours later.
The classic sugar crash. So how do we avoid the roller coaster?
You need a triad of protein, healthy fats, and dietary fiber. This combination physically alters how you digest. For example, the source material highlights several nutrient-dense options.
Okay.
Well, eggs provide highly bioavailable protein, meaning your digestive tract absorbs and utilizes almost 100% of the amino acids, wasting very little.
What about carbohydrates? Are they completely off the table?
Not at all, but the type matters. Traditional Indian breakfasts like idli paired with sambar are phenomenal because they combine lentil protein with fermented carbohydrates that are easier on the gut.
Oh, I love that.
You want foods that are low on the glycemic index like ancient grains such as pearl millet, also known as kambu, or ragi.
A glycemic index meaning?
Meaning they don't hit your bloodstream like a fire hose of sugar. They act more like a slow drip IV of steady energy. Adding oats is also great because they contain soluble fiber, which literally turns into a thick gel in your stomach, physically slowing down the rate at which you digest and keeping you full until lunch.
Okay, we've clearly established the biological rules for the people who need to eat. But I want to pivot back to that healthy adult we mentioned earlier.
Sure.
Let's say you are 35, you're perfectly healthy, you wake up, listen to your body, and you genuinely feel zero hunger. The thought of eating eggs at 7 a.m. just makes you feel nauseous. You want to skip. Are you essentially doing intermittent fasting?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of metabolism, we have to draw a very strict line between chaotic skipping and structured fasting. They are not the same thing.
Please clarify that, because I feel like everyone uses those terms interchangeably. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I skipped breakfast, I'm fasting today.
Scientifically, the difference is massive. Randomly skipping breakfast usually happens because you're rushed or stressed. You drink coffee, run on adrenaline all morning, and by 2:00 p.m., your hormones are screaming for calories.
And then you eat a whole pizza.
Exactly. You become ravenous and end up making terrible nutritional choices, usually refined carbs. Intermittent fasting, or IF, is a highly deliberate, premeditated eating window. Say, choosing to consume all your calories strictly between noon and 8:00 p.m.
It's a strategy of restricting the clock, not neglecting the nutrients.
Exactly. A proper IF protocol requires you to meticulously ensure that all your daily macro and micronutrients, every gram of protein, every vitamin, are packed into that shorter window.
Right.
When managed scientifically, IF is an incredibly powerful tool for lowering chronic insulin levels and managing weight. But it requires planning, and again, it is totally inappropriate for the vulnerable populations we discussed.
So taking a step back and looking at this entire stack of research, the old observational flaws, the BMJ meta-analysis, the insulin mechanics, where is the ultimate scientific consensus landing today?
The cutting edge of nutritional science is currently focused on a fascinating field called chrononutrition.
Chrononutrition. Breaking down the Latin, that's what? The relationship between time and food.
You nailed it. It is the study of how our meals interact with our internal circadian rhythms.
Oh, like our body clock.
Right. For a long time, we thought the brain had the only clock. But chrononutrition reveals that your liver, your pancreas, and your gut all have their own localized peripheral clocks.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And those organs don't have eyes to see the sun. They figure out what time it is based on when the first bite of food hits your stomach.
That is mind-blowing. So the food acts as the alarm clock for your internal organs.
Exactly. Think of your digestive system like a smartphone that requires a massive software update every day. The phone can only run the update efficiently if you plug it into the charger at the same time every night. If you plug it in at 6 a.m. one day, noon the next, and 10 a.m. the day after, the system gets confused, background processes lag, and the battery drains.
Oh, wow.
Your organs work the same way. The new golden rule of chrononutrition isn't about whether you eat at dawn or noon. It's about consistency.
The body craves a predictable rhythm.
Yes. Whether you thrive on a heavy breakfast or function perfectly by skipping it, the secret is training your biological clock by eating at the exact same times every single day. That consistency synchronizes your liver and pancreas, optimizing how you metabolize fat and sugar.
I find that incredibly empowering because it means we can finally drop the guilt.
Absolutely.
Your health isn't going to be destroyed just because you couldn't stomach a bowl of oatmeal at sunrise. Your longevity is defined by the macro picture. It is the overall quality of the food you eat over a 24-hour period. It's ensuring you get deep sleep, managing your cortisol and stress, moving your body, and avoiding truly destructive habits.
The human body is a brilliant, adaptable machine. It doesn't operate in the vacuum of a single morning meal.
So here's the ultimate takeaway for you listening right now. Listen to your own biology. If you wake up and your stomach is rumbling, eat. Fuel yourself with a high-quality, protein-dense, high-fiber meal.
Right, no donuts.
Exactly, no donuts. But if you are in that healthy adult category and you just aren't hungry, the science gives you full permission to wait. Skip the forced feeding, but ensure that when you finally do break that fast, you make those calories count with real, nutrient-dense food.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. We just explored chrononutrition and how remarkably adaptable our internal clocks are to our external schedules.
Yeah.
If our biology is genuinely that flexible, it forces us to ask a profound question.
What's that?
How much of our desperate, panicked morning hunger is actually a true biological necessity, and how much of it is just a deeply ingrained psychological habit, a rhythm we've been artificially trained into by the invention of the industrialized 9-to-5 workday?
Wow. Are we eating to fuel our biology, or are we just eating because the factory whistle told us to? Keep that in mind tomorrow morning when you're staring down that cereal bowl.